Alright, hello world history people. Let's do a lesson today about the Renaissance. The Renaissance is when Europeans started thinking outside the box, coming up with a lot of new art, new ideas, and this is really the major event 500 years ago that shaped the way the modern world thinks and is organized today. So let's check it out. So we got here the Statue of David, famously done by Michelangelo. You'll find this statue in Florence, Italy today. And hopefully you've been seeing this picture around. It's the Mona Lisa, the most famous picture ever drawn. It was drawn by Leonardo da Vinci 500 years ago. Alright, so let me fill in some European history for you really quick. Between 400 AD and 1400 AD, the world was in the Dark Ages. There was really not a lot of major technological changes, no major advances in political thought. The Islamic Caliphate was breaking apart around this time, so the Islamic world is going down. It was really a rough time to live on planet Earth. Not a lot of great things were happening. All education was done through the context of religion, and Europe was a really dumb, ignorant place. But the Renaissance is about to change that. Let's get into it. So yeah, the Roman architecture and the Dark Ages architecture. This is so funny because this Roman architecture was made 1,000 years before this house was made. So Europeans got dumber and society went backwards for 1,000 years. It's crazy. So this is when things start to change. In the 1400s, the world recovered from the Black Death, the Mongol Empire collapsed, and it's sort of like the reset button gets hit on history, and that's why this is sort of the true starting point in this class. Europe got a lot of new money, and European society began to change dramatically. These old cities of thatched roofs and houses are now becoming pretty fancy, and they're building a lot better. They're going to have a lot better art, doing a lot more trade. It's a more interconnected world when this period begins. This is the city of Venice, Italy. I've been there. It's a super cool place. This is the city of Florence. They got that big old church in the middle. It's still there. And this is another part of Venice, the Grand Canal. So, Renaissance means rebirth. Europeans became very interested in trying to learn everything from the past, especially Greek, Roman thoughts, learn about science, medicine, travel, and they're finally pushing learning outside of the context of the Christian faith. For all the Dark Ages, the Christian faith ran everything about European thought, so this is the time where people are starting to think outside the box. I mean, look, everybody was still Christian, okay? This movement is not anti-Christian, because you're about to see a whole bunch of art that's about Jesus and stuff. But for the first time, people are thinking about more than just Christianity, and they're starting to experiment, invent, develop, and it's an important period in world history. People traveled all over the world finding old books. And the crazy thing was, they were trying to learn stuff about Greek and Roman thought, and they couldn't find any books in Europe. So they actually found some Arabic books that were translations of Greek and Roman books. So it's interesting that the Middle Eastern Muslim world kept these knowledge alive, because during the Dark Ages, Europeans lost everything. And let me share you a story I learned in college. So, in college, I read this book called Tacitus's History of Rome. And the book was pretty interesting. It was this guy, lived in ancient Rome, wrote about what happened back then. And I got to this one point in the book where it said the translator was unable to continue translating the rest of this chapter because the book was damaged. And when I asked my professor about that, my professor told me that in ancient Rome, they had a whole bunch of copies of this book, Tacitus's History. It was a really popular book, but only one copy survived to the modern world, because during the Dark Ages, a lot of these books got destroyed, burned, and lost. So this one single copy that survived, the story goes that in around 1500, so during this period of history, the Renaissance, some guys were wandering around France, and they found this farmer, and they said, "Hey, farmer man, do you have any old books?" And the farmer guy goes, "Yeah, I got some old books. I can't read them, so I use them as toilet paper." And they found right there next to his toilet the only copy left in human history of Tacitus's Histories of Rome. And thankfully, he only ripped out a couple pages in the middle and used them as toilet paper. But I kind of wish that book wasn't used as toilet paper. So take care of your books, kids. Who knows? The last one needs to make it to the future. There you go. All right, now all of Europe benefited from the Renaissance. This new excitement of ideas traveled all over. People got it. But the places that are really the highlights for the Renaissance are the Italian cities of Florence and Venice. And still to this day, you could go to Florence and Venice and see some really cool stuff that was built 500 years ago. And there is a copy of Venice here in Las Vegas. It's the hotel called the Venetian. And I mean, I don't know if I'll really make this a big deal during the pandemic, but I do have this extra credit assignment where students explore the Venetian hotel and casino complex on the Vegas Strip. They take some pictures of some art and some architecture and some statues, and they just sort of see Renaissance art themselves here in Las Vegas. So that's pretty cool. All right, here's some Renaissance style art. It's pretty cool. This is the Marco Polo Plaza in Venice today, and the pigeons. You even see them in this picture. The pigeons at this square are notoriously dangerous. I've seen it myself, where a little kid got attacked by a pigeon. He was screaming. It was amazing. And then what do we got here? Look, the canals of Venice. It's the city on the water. Look at how blue the water is. This is not real life, though. They definitely photoshopped this water, because I've been there before, and the water's gunky. And yep, this is the famous cathedral in Florence. All right, so how do you know what Renaissance art looks like? The easiest way to understand the Renaissance is through the new styles of art that start getting used around Europe. And the styles of art are realism, three-dimensionalism, portraits, and attention to nature. So I'm going to go through a lot of art on the next slide and highlight these artistic styles. Let me just comment about them a little bit. So the first thing is realism, is when you're drawing like people living their regular lives, people that are correctly proportioned. They almost look like human beings you would see in any regular day. Because in the past, sometimes you would draw these not realistic pictures. People would have wings, people would have halos, some people would be 10 times as big as the person next to them. So that's not realism. The other one is three-dimensionalism. This one's pretty cool, and I'll show you on the pictures. They draw the picture so it sort of zooms in. There's kind of this triangle pattern where the background is really small, and then the sides kind of curve in, so it gives your eye this impression that you're looking super deep into the background of the picture. Portraits tend to focus on individual people, or there tends to be a lot of emotion in people's faces. In the past, early Dark Ages art was so boring. There was no emotion in people's faces. And this one isn't as common, but attention to nature. So there's finally a background, there's some trees, some forestry, all that. And the most famous artists of the Renaissance were the Ninja Turtles minus Donatello. There was a Renaissance artist named Donatello, but he wasn't really famous. So if you remember the Ninja Turtles, you got Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, and forget about Donatello. And Leonardo was definitely the top tier Renaissance artist. He's the guy who drew the Mona Lisa, after all. Michelangelo was probably second place, and Raphael was third. And a lot of these are some of the top-ranking art in world history. So let's check them out. Okay, this painting is called The Last Supper. I want you to notice here the 3D aspect. How, look at the back of the back wall behind Jesus right here is super small. And these walls are kind of slanted at this angle, sort of drawing people's eyes in. It's like this V shape almost in the art, because you would expect the back wall to be a full rectangle, but it's not. It's this tiny square in the middle. And you see a lot of emotion on these guys' faces, so I could say this is sort of like a portrait, but it's definitely realism. It's Jesus and all of his disciples hanging out one more time. Right here, this painting is called The School of Athens. This is by Raphael. You'll find it in the Vatican City today. And also, once again, it's got this 3D aspect to it where the background there is super tiny, but the foreground is really big, so your eye gets sort of drawn in there. I would say it's definitely realism as well. These are a whole bunch of famous people from the ancient world hanging out in Athens. And then this is a statue by Michelangelo. What's the name of this statue? I know it. I know it if we were in real life. But this is Mary taking Jesus off the cross, and it's also in the Vatican City today. Okay, let's check out some more of this art right here. I would say this one is, I mean, I want to call it realism. I mean, you see it in the faces, but it's not really realism because it's little angels with wings. But maybe you could even argue that it has kind of a portrait feel to it because it's definitely realistic faces. And then this one's definitely a portrait, Mary and baby Jesus. And then this one, look at the attention to detail in this one. This is the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. You'll find this in Vatican City today. This is done by Michelangelo. He painted this whole thing upside down, which is just amazing. But look at like the muscles and the defined nature on these pictures. That's just really cool. And yeah, this is that same picture, and the entire top of the Sistine Chapel is this amazing artwork. And I've been there myself. It's pretty fantastic. But in reality, the room isn't as lit up. It's kind of a dark room. And I know that they keep it dark because they don't want the art to get damaged by the light. So it's cool that that art's been there for 500 years. And then, yeah, here's another picture, which is just realism. Like, this one has nothing to do with Christianity. It's just some people hanging out in a cafe or something way back 500 years ago. All right, let's do some more art here. So this one definitely has that 3D aspect where you're drawn up all the way into heaven. You see these guys kind of floating around. Here's another one, a 3D aspect where the sky is a smaller square, but the foreground is really big. So there's these angles that draw your view up. And this one I would say is realism. Also, there's kind of an attention to nature there. You got a big old background going on. This one's, I just think this is cool how the stair spirals up like this. So it's definitely got some interesting elements in drawing perspective. And yeah, this one's a portrait, but this is Medusa, the woman with snakes. But you definitely see a lot of emotion in her face. And then, yeah, here's realism. Some dudes hanging out with horses. Got some nature in the background as well. And this one's all nature all day, so that's a huge Renaissance style. And then this one is just one I'm going to end with, because this one shows you really what the Renaissance was about. You've got a lot of emotion in the faces of these of Mary and baby Jesus. You've got nature going on in the background. It's definitely a realistic depiction of a woman and her baby. But then over here, this is the old style of art that the Renaissance is now getting away from. Mary is like 4 times as big as these other people around her. The people around her are angels with wings, so that's not super realistic. And then baby Jesus, like he has the hair of like a teenager, even though he's still a baby. So that also doesn't make any sense. The background is stupid basic, red and gold. So the Renaissance was just significantly better artistic quality. Okay, so we'll talk about the next stuff next time. So peace out.